So I want to speak to this because this poor guy's applied to 3,000 jobs and he's not gotten a hit. And I do remember my own experience getting laid off like maybe 6, 7 years ago. And I applied to 300 jobs. I never got a hit. I ended up taking a job that I felt was beneath the pay range that I wanted. And I just took it because I needed to work. It looks real bad on your resume when you don't work for a while and people just stop picking you up. And I don't know why I didn't get hits. I was very qualified like this guy was. I was very fit for the jobs I was getting, but I didn't get hits. 3,000 is a lot. Now, there are some things happening in the job industry today and in job markets that are affecting your ability to get a job that you apply for. And I'm going to go into those because I want to give you the inside knowledge from somebody who is a talent acquisition manager and who does this on a daily basis. This is my job. So the first thing is technology. Online job boards are a huge thing. They make it really easy to apply nowadays. There's quick apply, there's easy apply. People spam applications all the time. It's almost like an arms race because people that want jobs have gotten used to the freedom to be able to spam job apps like boom, 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 and those send out hundreds, right? Hundreds. And of course, you may not even take any of those jobs seriously. So you get ghosted by employees all the time. And 80% of interviews just don't show up. I mean, people just don't answer their phone. You're going to contact 1,000 people and you may actually go through with 10 of those to hire. Is not because you didn't want to hire them, but because they just weren't interested or they fell off the other jobs. They spam 200 applications and they're only taking one job. So, I mean, you feel like your time's been wasted as an employer. Well, on the flip side, the employers are learning to do that to the candidates. They're using technology for their advantage as well. So they can keep these job postings up for years on end and just say that they have this job opening and collect applicants. And they're waiting. Maybe they don't need that person right now, but they could make room for them. They could do some flexible staffing if they found that really good, solid candidate. The chances of you being that candidate are pretty low unless you're applying for something directly in your expert field and you have you check mark all the boxes, right? But your chances are low. And so you could apply for a lot of jobs and just not get a job because they're waiting on that perfect Goldilocks candidate. So I really don't do that. If I have a listing closed that is I've filled, I close it, right? Obviously, we want a great candidate, but we're not going to just keep a listing up perpetually and make it look like, just because from a branding standpoint, it makes it look like, from my perspective, makes us look like a company that's always hiring. And that makes people think we have lots of turnover, which we don't. And we're not a great place to work. So obviously I don't want to do that, but companies just do that when it's just expected that it's just a huge organization. They're always going to have openings. Well, they can afford to keep those things up all the time, even though they're not really looking. Number two, a lot of it has to do with what jobs you're applying for. The further back you go, the more common it is to apply for a job that is above your current expertise level or pay grade and to get that job. You could expect that, okay, I've had some leadership responsibilities at my current job. I've been working there for a little bit. I was an assistant manager at this one place. I could apply to be a general manager in another place and they might hire me. That is not the case anymore. Remember, these companies now have access to so many applicants that they can afford to wait for somebody that is the right fit or somebody who has that expertise level. If you want to have that opportunity to move up, you need to have that experience already. And chances are they have an internal candidate who's going to be able to fill that before you. So you should naturally expect to have to take a step back when you're moving into a new position, which has often been common wisdom in the job market, but a lot of people just don't realize that. Because of social media and because of mass media, they feel that there's incompetent people at the top all the time, and why can't that be me? I deserve to be that. So even though I've never done a management position in my life, I'm going to apply a management role and I should get it because I deserve that. And you just don't realize that those people in those positions, yeah, they got lucky, but that's not necessarily going to be you. The rest of us have to work to get there. In fact, the rest of us, not only do we have to work to get there, we have to go through setbacks where we are delayed in our move up the ladder, and we have to fight through that and learn skills to fight through those things in order to get to the places where we are. And the only reason I think that's a big issue is because I'm looking at applications. 90% of the people that are applying are not qualified for the jobs that they're applying for. They're just not. I look at these applications and it's like I love you all and I want to be able to bring you on and I would love to give you a job, but you're just not ready for this job. And you're all applying up. Like 90% of my applications are people applying up. And I'm just saying, like, in this type where you have access to so many resumes, so many applicants, applying up just isn't going to happen anymore. And it still can. You might be that lucky person that got that spot, but it's very rare. So you have to be willing to take that job and apply down. And then number three, a lot of companies still have the same employment expectations and work ethic expectations and all this stuff that we did 20, 30 years ago, maybe 40, whatever, right? And the population now just isn't trained up or is leveling up or keeping that same level of consistency with them, unfortunately. And that you can blame that on a lot of things, the breakdown in our public school system, the breakdown in our universities, our culture. There's a lot of reasons why people are not taught those skills anymore, but companies expect that. Just over the last 10 to 20 years, the number of people that have gaps in their resumes, lots of jobs in like a short time frame, has gone way up. It used to be, that like 20% of applicants, 10% of applicants way back in the day would have those issues, and you could afford to discard those resumes. And if we're looking for somebody in a consistent long-term role, then we're not worried about that. We can move on to other candidates. Nowadays, that's like 70, 80%, 90% of candidates in some roles. And even in management roles, you have a lot of high turnover, people that move jobs every 2 to 3 years or 1 to 2 years, and you're going, man, like these expectations are harder to come by. And so companies perpetually still looking for those candidates. And so you have this weird situation where companies, or they're all looking for that top 10 to 20%, all of them. And they're competing for that top 10, 20% of applicants. And if you're in that top 10, 20%, there's going to be opportunities for you. But if you're in the rest of them, like the 70, 80%, 90%, it's a little bit harder to get in, and you'll go through more applications. And, and granted, like I'm a guy who has worked his entire life. I have never stopped working. I've always worked, and I've put myself into all my jobs. I try the best I can, every one of them. I run into challenges, I run into difficulties to overcome those obstacles. Even I had a moment where I was laid off and I didn't get a job immediately, and there was a gap in my resume, and I got thrown out all the time. People just didn't want to talk to me. It's like, I am highly competent. I am prepared to work in my industry. I've had a lot of training, and they just weren't interested. So just flipping. So I've experienced this. I'm not talking down to anybody. I went through this. And it was a real struggle, but you're going to experience that because the companies just haven't figured that out. The expectation is still there. Here's what I can do to help you, right? There's a lot of uncontrollables in this, and you can't necessarily change the market. You can't change the jobs that are happening. Really, the only thing that you can change is yourself, and make yourself a more competitive candidate. And that's probably the answer that a lot of people don't want to hear. They want to hear that somebody's just going to fix it for them and they're going to be adequate. Well, I can help you, at least give you advice on how to fix things, because a lot of applicants, like a good chunk of the ones that I come across, have the same issues. Obviously they're not representing themselves in their resumes. They misspell things, or they have gaps in their history, or there's a difference in their work history on their resume and what they say over the phone, which is a huge red flag. People will come to the interview and they'll answer poorly on integrity questions. They don't answer good at competency questions. They can't think of examples of the times that they did things. Doing just basic interviewing skills, basic people skills. They're not having those, and you really need to work on those and clean your resume up. Be good at your people skills and your interviewing skills. Polish up on those, because that's your window to a job opportunity. And the last thing I'll say is that life is definitely changing. Technology is changing things. AI is changing things significantly. There's a lot of jobs that are set to be consolidated over the next 4 to 5 years, a massive chunk. In fact, estimates between 40 and 90% of our jobs will be consolidated in the next 5 years by AI. And a lot of you just think AI is just movies and pictures, and that's all you know about AI. But no, you don't know the type of learning it does on the back end, how it can run supply chain for you, it can run analysis for you, how it can communicate from here to there, how it can keep track of things. And there's so many jobs on the back end that you don't think about that it's replacing. Robotics on top of AI is going to replace a lot of warehouse and labor jobs, anything that has to do with production that you can put in a controlled environment. So there's a lot of jobs that are really in trouble, and I don't think it's going to get any better. You have to have skills that are going to be marketable. I don't know the long-term answer. The military already did a study back in the 60s that 10 to 15% of humans in our modern world no longer had an IQ that was capable of functioning in the U.S. military. 10 to 15%. And the military is kind of like a catch-all. Like, if any job industry, like there's any place you can go historically, was military, if you couldn't do anything else. That's no longer the case. Like, there's 10 to 15% of the population can't even function at the most basic level career-wise in our society. So what does that mean? As AI and technology grow and we get more complex and more skills are required, there's a whole chunk of the population that isn't able to function normally in these types of societies. And that is a big problem. How do we solve that? How do those people have functional, meaningful lives and they produce something to the system? I made a previous video on AI and I went into this a little bit. It's a big question, and I put some thought behind it. I've had talks with people that have put thoughts behind it. I can talk about more of that as I go, but I did want to talk about the job market right now and why this is such a struggle. Work on your skills. Definitely apply to things that you know you can get, and start there. Don't be afraid to do that. And then make sure you're cleaning up your resume and you get intelligent with your phone answers. Polish those interview skills. Those are going to be important. And just be in it with patience for the long haul. Get all the help you can. It's anything that you can do counts in this job market. I wish everyone the best. I really want there to be a place for everyone. I want everyone to be happy and functional in society. And I really hope that if you're struggling, you find your job. If you really have questions, you want to reach out to me, I can always try to help. I'm a very open person. I can always be willing to help and answer these questions and maybe help you find what you're looking for.